Talk is everything. It's every relationship in your life is a sequence of conversations. And if we can do each one of them even a tiny bit better, imagine the accumulated effect that would have on your life, on your relationships, on your work, on the world. This is what we all need to get better at. And it's going to happen in tiny little increments, tiny micro decisions. The decision to make that joke, that decision to ask that great question, the decision to let people have differing views and not get mad at them.
Okay, so joining us now on Open Book is Allison Wood Brooks. She's an associate professor and fellow at the Harvard Business School. It's a place I always wanted to go to, Allison, but I didn't have the balls to apply to it. We'll talk about that in a second.
Love it.
The title of your book is Talk, the Science of Conversation and the Art of Being Ourselves. And if you hear some hoarseness in my voice, I apologize. I'm a little under the weather with these young kids in the middle of the winter. So first of all, let's talk about this, okay? Because I love this book, and I think we have a hard time being ourselves. And I'm very good friends with Robert Greene, who I think you may know from the 48 Laws of Power and from The Art of Seduction and all the different great books that he's written. But he says this to me all the time, that we have good things in us and bad things in us, and we have types of conflict in us, and we have a very hard time articulating it to other people because we don't want to be perceived as bad people.
Yep.
So let's start there. But before we do that, if you don't mind, let's talk a little bit about your background so we can establish who you are for our viewers and listeners. And then let's talk about why we have such a problem being ourselves.
Yeah. So I'm Allison Wood Brooks. I'm a professor at Harvard Business School. I've been there for 12 or 13 years. No, I look impossibly young. I got my PhD at Wharton, and I'm a behavioral scientist. I created a course. I was recruited to Harvard to teach a course on negotiation, did that for about 4 years, and then created a new course called Talk, which is the basis of this book and has sort of hit a nerve at Harvard and beyond. Before that sort of professional turn in my life, I'm an identical twin, which I think is not just a coincidence that I ended up becoming sort of fascinated and obsessed with conversation and studying humans, because being a twin is a weird and very lucky existence.
Hey everyone, it's Anthony Scaramucci here with some straight talk. Let me tell you, we've got 85% of our viewers who haven't hit the subscribe button yet. What's up with that? It hurts. Listen, I made my career by going all in. Right now, only 15% of our viewers are part of our subscribed family. So please take action. This helps us book more amazing guests. Hit subscribe, join our community, and let's turn these numbers upside down. Now back to the show.
Identical or fraternal or
Identical.
What does your twin do, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, her name's Sarah Carney. She runs a nonprofit called Prime Coalition. They've some professors of my colleagues of mine at the business school have written 2 cases about her, and I didn't even know it. So she's she's a very interesting person. I'm very lucky to know her.
Okay, so I have to ask this: when is your birthday?
March 12th.
Oh, March 12th. You almost okay. So you're a Pisces.
And it's our 40th, Anthony. We're turning 40.
Yeah, I feel bad for you. Okay, at age 61, I feel really bad for you guys. Okay, it's like the funny thing about 40, and I'll just say this to you: when I turned 40, I was like, okay, wow, I think I'm very old. I didn't start getting into the groove until 40. So life begins at 40, Allison. You're going to be just fine.
Thank you. That's very empowering.
So yeah, and you know that already anyway. You're just psychological. Let me tell you the bad part about being 40. I turned 60 last year. I just turned 61 yesterday. I was just getting used to 60.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I was just getting used to 60, and then boom, I'm now 61, right? So before you know it, you're going to be 45, okay? So don't worry, okay?
You're very youthful, Anthony. Very youthful.
Yeah, so there's a lot of work being done, okay? I can give you, if you're nice to me, because one of the problems with me is I don't have a problem being myself, okay? So this is why I want to talk to you about this. I want to understand what this is all about. But if you're nice to me, I'll give you all my health and beauty tips, okay?
Oh, I can't wait. I want them all. Yeah.
You got very good skin from this YouTube video, I can tell, okay?
But not for long. I mean, I'm getting to the age when I'm going to need help soon.
Yeah, I'm not worried about you right now. Tell me about why people can't be themselves. You're hitting a nerve. You said you're hitting a nerve. I know why you're hitting a nerve. Because people can't be themselves. So tell me why.
There's a million reasons that we can't be ourselves, especially in conversation. I mean, when you're talking to somebody else, we're constantly doing a curation task. We're deciding the full contents of our mind is incredibly complex and sophisticated, and there's so much you could possibly say to somebody else. And we're making these little micro decisions of like, well, what tiny fraction of what's in my mind am I going to say out loud to another live human being? And that curation decision is really fraught. I mean, we're making a decision of who am I going to be to you in front of you? I'm doing it right now. I'm like, should I be scientist Allison? Should I be professor Allison? Should I be basketball player? Should I be mom Allison? And we're constantly toggling and making these micro decisions every time that we speak in a conversation.
Is there a mean Allison in there?
I think there's a mean Allison. She's I think back in middle school and high school, I had more of an open battle with mean Allison, and I hope that nice Allison really won. But I do feel like in my mind, I still, like everyone, have to fight against judgmental reactions to other people's behaviors. But it's become more second nature to not let her out so much.
Right. So you habits. You got to work on these habits.
That's right.
Again, I'm not putting this on you because there's a mean Anthony in there. There's a jealous Anthony in there. There's an envious Anthony. There's a rude Anthony. There's an arrogant Anthony. There's all different types of emotions, but there's certain emotions that we want to project to the world, that we're nice and kind and we're philanthropic. Yeah. We don't want to project those other emotions. And when we get caught doing that, we make ourselves feel bad, don't we?
Yeah, you do. Now, there's a potential for great humor in it, right? Acknowledging that there are all of those versions of you inside and sort of letting them leak out in moments when it seems like you're going to say like, hey, I'm going to tell you something true right now, right? Like, here's something that's living within me. Most people wouldn't let you see this, but I'm going to let you see this little piece of me. There's potential for real connection and humor
Okay,
there.
but when you do that, don't you feel like you're more connected to somebody?
Yeah.
So when you're like more vulnerable with somebody, you're letting them in, and all of a sudden you're able to establish some trust with them, right?
It's so funny. I have a colleague at Harvard. Her name is Leslie John. She studies self-disclosure. She has a book coming out next year called Reveal, and it's very much navigating this spectrum of transparency and sharing and opacity or not sharing. I think about it constantly in terms of like, what do we decide to say, and where there's also magic in keeping things unsaid, right? And knowing that you're so close with somebody that they understand what's happening in your mind, even without you saying it.
Yeah, but you don't want to say stuff because what ends up happening is you don't want to be overly judged either, right? Like if you came from a broken home or you came from a abusive family or whatever it is, you put all that stuff in the closet, right? You want to project something that isn't. So in the conversation that you and I are having, has your mind wandered a little bit? Because in your book, you say that 24% of the conversation time, the mind is moving on or wandering to other things.
My mind has wandered so much. I mean, part of my 40-year-old awakening has been a realization of my intense ADHD. So like all people's minds wander, particularly mine. You have so many books in your background and a little Yoda, and I'm reading that I'm wondering about the car. You also said, yes, we're managing the impression we make on other people. My mind wandered. I've been thinking about Irving Goffman and his theory in the 20th century about impression management and saving face. Like my mind is going all over into the stratosphere all the time. Yes.
If you saw my entire office, you would know that I am a train wreck of a mind. Okay. I am ridiculously disorganized. If I showed you the shit thrown in here, but that car is actually from Superman 1. So I'm a big Superman enthusiast here. You see that?
Is it a baseball glove?
My wife and I are actually in that picture on the bottom there. I had the artist paint it in.
Oh, I love that.
Okay, and so that's Superman and Muhammad Ali fighting. These headsets are from my podcast. Okay, if you look over here, this is look at the mess here.
I love it. There's so much potential for distraction. Has your mind already been wandering? How much has your mind been wandering?
Yeah, no, my mind has totally been wandering because I'm trying to figure you out because you're presenting something, but you are something else too. And so I'm trying to figure it out. Maybe I need to read the book Reveal as well, right? Because a lot going on.
But every person you talk to is so many different people, and everyone has multiple selves. Everyone knows so much, and the only way you're going to figure me out is by asking the questions that you actually want answers to.
But aren't you as a person, this is a more generic question about people, aren't you born a certain way, Allison?
You know what? As a psychologist for a long time, I thought not. I thought everything was learnable and trainable and you could develop better habits. And then I had my own kids, just like you did. And it did change my perspective. They do come out quite different from each other. So I think I've softened my view on what's the balance between nature and nurture. And particularly in the context of conversation, my students ask about this all the time. Aren't there people that are just born good conversationalists? Aren't they just naturally charismatic? Aren't they extroverted? Aren't they gregarious, life of the party? And I think to some extent, they're not born that way. I mean, no one's born knowing how to even have conversation, but some people pick up on the feedback all around them and get better at it faster than others. But we can all get better at it.
What makes somebody charismatic?
Oh my God. All the things in the book, every little thing. Often when we think about people who are charismatic, they're really great listeners and they're really good at calling back to things. They think about other people and they call back to stuff that you've experienced before. They're curious. They want to hear about it. They want to reminisce. They want to make things. They also seek to make things fun. They don't let conversations get boring. That's the L in the talk maxims. The L is levity. So they tend to be really good at levity. They're good at listening. Good at asking questions, good at picking topics that will be interesting to their partners, not just to themselves, and then sensing when the topics start to lose steam and move to something else. You're really good at that. You move topics fast.
Well, because I only got 30 minutes with you. I want to have 5 hours. I want to be like a Joe Rogan conversation with you, but I've only
We
got
need
30
days.
minutes. I only got 30 minutes, so I got to talk fast. I got to think about what I'm saying, right?
Yep, it's exactly right. So,
you know,
but this is something that charismatic people do. They tend to switch topics more quickly until they land on something that's really juicy and really exciting, and then you can kind of stay there for a little bit longer.
Well, I'll tell you a fun, quick story. So Bill Clinton and I have a little bit of a relationship. I invited him to one of my conferences, and he was like, you're good on TV. Do you have a media coach? And I said, no, I don't have a media coach. And he said, hey man, Tiger Woods has a golf coach. You got to have a media coach. And so I said to him, so who's your media coach? And so anyway, he introduced me to his media coach about 12 years ago. And I did a 1-year course in media training.
What did you learn?
I'm going to tell you what I learned. Okay. Shut up and listen.
Yeah.
Okay. Particularly if you're moderating something, shut up and listen. And you'll be more interesting to people if you shut up and listen. And the other thing I learned is talk more slowly. You won't say the word or okay or any of these verbal tics that we have as we're trying to form our thoughts if you just talk more slowly.
But people can put a lot of pressure on themselves to get rid of those verbal tics, which I understand. When my students listen back to their recordings of their conversation, they're mortified by how many disfluencies, stutters are there. Which is true. If you're doing sort of podcasting or one-way speaking, ums and uhs are distracting. In natural dialogue between real people in their lives, those disfluencies serve important purposes. They often signal when someone's...
You're 1,000% right about it. In fact...
It's so important. Like it shows that you're feeling uncertain about something and that your partner should wait for you to sort of clarify.
So much so do I believe that, just going back to the media coaching, I had gotten myself to the point where I said no ums and okays. And the media coach said to me, you sound like a robot.
No one wants to interact with a robot.
You have to feather in some ums and okays.
Yeah, it's exactly right.
People are expecting some ums and okays, but in a public speech, they want less of them. Let's put it that way. But how do you become a better listener? So you've got students. What do you tell your students? How do you become a better listener?
Listen, for decades, people have been talking about active listening, this idea of using nonverbal cues like eye contact, smiling, nodding, leaning forward to show someone that you're hearing them. That's good. That's like listening 101. But to really be a charismatic, responsive, intensive listener, what you really need to do is fight against your mind wandering, which you and I both do intensively. It's part of why I love conversation, is that it's like the challenge of trying to stay engaged. How can I make this interesting for you, but also for myself? So doing that hard work of making it engaging for everyone. But then, and this is what I teach my students, and this is like listening 201, advanced listening, you need to speak your listening out loud. You need to repeat what you've heard someone say. You need to ask follow-up questions. You need to paraphrase what multiple people have said in a group. You need to call back to stuff that you've talked about earlier in the conversation or earlier in your relationship. Those are the only undeniable signals that you've actually heard the other person. Smiling, nodding, leaning forward. You can do those things even if you're thinking about Yoda or your grocery list. You cannot repeat what someone said or ask a follow-up question if you weren't intensively listening to them.
I mean, it's well said. And so since I am listening to you, you're curious about Yoda. So I'll just tell you that my 7-year-old gave me that because it's from The Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, Dad, put this in your office. It'll make you smart like Yoda. Okay, so hopefully I'm
Did it
getting
work?
a positive aura. I don't know if it's working or not. Okay. But I hope so. I mean, I hope I'm trying to be smart.
Do you? Let me ask you a question. On any level, do you feel like putting tchotchkes in your office is a great topic seed, so that someone like me will then say, "What's the deal with Yoda?" Yeah.
Yes, but I'm also a child. Okay, I am very in touch with my inner child. Okay, so here, okay, I'm going to show you something. This will end up in the podcast.
Please.
Something I'm very proud of. Can you hold on one second?
Of
Okay,
course.
this is very embarrassing. So, do you recognize that? Okay, and
it
for
a
people
hookah?
listening in, do you recognize that? You see, you're too young to recognize.
Oh,
it.
I dream of Jeannie. It's Barbara.
Oh, you are. Yeah,
Oh
okay,
my
see?
God.
Okay, and you see, so Barbara's been on my podcast, and I've had dinner with her in LA several times. And for people listening in, I have the original Genie bottle from I Dream of Jeannie.
What?
There's about 70 of these, and Barbara signed it for me. See, she signed it
That
there.
is gorgeous.
And if you were my vintage, if you were 61 and you were a male,
She's the
heterosexual,
dream.
you had a crush on Barbara Eden. And so my wife, who has no problem with me having dinner with Barbara Eden, okay, I will say that she brings her 91-year-old chaperone, aka her husband, with her. But it is what it is, right? I have to.
How old is Barbara Eden now?
94.
Wow, I bet she's still a babe. Does she have a belly button? Because they never showed her belly button on the show.
She does have a belly button. I haven't seen her belly button, to be honest, but she does have one. But I'm bringing this up because, like, my office is a throwback to my childhood. Because I want to come into my office. I want to think about what I was doing as a kid and what my inner child was.
Does that help you bring yourself to conversations and to your work?
Yeah, I think it's important, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Very much so.
So you mentioned humor a lot in this book.
I do.
Are you a humorous person? I mean, I know the answer, but I want you to articulate it.
Who can say that about themselves? That's crazy.
Of course you're a humorous person. Okay.
I live as a core family value. I don't think I would have survived my childhood if I didn't learn to keep up with the silly humor in my family.
Okay.
I live for humor. In fact, a huge part of the value add that I hope I bring to the Harvard Business School is like a relentless insistence on levity. I think it might be one of the biggest weaknesses of probably a lot of organizations, but also Harvard is like the only way that you can make great progress and feel connected and alive and safe is if you feel a spirit of play, and that comes largely from humor. If people aren't funny, they can just find it through just like warmth, I think too. But yeah, I live for levity, Anthony.
What's your favorite TV show?
Right now or forever?
No, tell me.
Right now we've been watching Silo, which I will say is in this theme. I also just watched The Diplomat with Kerry Russell. And Silo is Rebecca Ferguson. I'm really liking seeing these protagonist, main character, female characters emerge who are physically tough, super smart. They have skills. They're nuanced. They're interesting. And actually, in both of those shows, they have male partners who are also interesting and high achieving, but aren't the main dish. They're a side dish. So I love watching that.
Okay, I've watched both those shows. I love both those shows. I do a lot of traveling, so I'm always on.
Did you notice that about those shows?
I have noticed that about those shows, but I would say that those shows. Listen, we probably shouldn't get political, but I'm not a very woke person.
It's all right.
What I like about those shows is they're not woke. They show women who are tough and strong, but they're not patronizing these women in these shows. Do you see what
Right.
I'm saying? And
Yeah.
I think that's a very important message. If you're
I like
in
that.
Hollywood listening, you want tough, strong women, and you don't want virtue signaling. You don't want patronization, if that makes any sense. You know,
It does.
And
It does. How do you think other shows patronize women? Or what are they doing right?
Listen, if you go to Broadway now, they will put the whole spectrum of people on the stage as a virtue signal. There'll be very heavy set people in the dance troupe. There'll be very different types of people. There'll be men and women that shouldn't be there, okay, but they're there. And I think we have a tendency to do this now as a form of virtual signaling as opposed to just talent.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think people be mad at me for saying that, you know, and I think the cancel culture is ebbing now, finally. I think people are finally saying that's not going to be the thing, you know?
Yep.
So, but
Yep.
hopefully that continues. All right. We got a couple more minutes. Apologies. Let's talk about apologies. Do we apologize to each other too much or too little?
Too little. Too little. There's a lot of discourse. There's a lot of
Because,
discourse.
people born in the 1940s that are men, they don't apologize.
I know it's a real
that's
problem.
That's a sign of weakness for them to apologize.
I know I think it's a real problem. Until recently, so scientists hadn't studied real conversations between real people until probably the last 5 or 10 years. We've studied public speaking and like pretend interactions for many decades, maybe even centuries. But studying real transcripts between real people and real relationships is a thing that's only possible now at large scale. And one of the things that has jumped out at me and at all scientists is like, we have not studied apology behavior in real conversations. And when you do, and you look at people in real relationships, the people who apologize frequently and well have better relationships. And there's almost no evidence from real conversations that refusing to apologize or neglecting to apologize is ever better than apologizing.
So, have you ever read Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People?
Of course. Yes.
Okay. What does he say in that book about apologies?
I don't remember what he says about apology. Does he say anything about apologies?
Yeah. He says that you have to apologize. He says that the minute you apologize, remember, if you read Robert Cialdini's book, The Psychology of Influence. Cialdini, if you read his book, what does he say? He says that there's a common bond that we have in terms of reciprocation. And then the second bond that we have is in our vulnerability. If we can share a piece of ourselves with another person, we can establish trust. And so the combination of those two things create bonds. They create relationships. And so what Dale Carnegie said is that when we offer up an apology and we make an admission that we're actually human and we're wrong about something, it makes us more human and more endearing to the other person, but it also gives the other person an opportunity to do us a mitzvah, which is to forgive us and to move on and also to accept their fallibility in situations. You know?
Yeah,
couples that can apologize to each other for various indiscretions are they usually stay together. You know, there's a very funny expression: you can be right or you can be married, Allison.
Yeah, exactly.
Before?
Exactly.
So
yes.
You have to eat a little bit of crow in life. Okay, so.
Yes, and apologizing is hard. People don't like to do it because it makes yourself vulnerable to the other person. They don't have to forgive you. But that's not the point of making an apology. The apology is saying, look, I see that you've been harmed or you've been hurt or something as bad has happened, and I'm sorry for that. I don't like that you are hurting. And then they can control how they respond to you, right? You don't have, actually in the book, we talk about the study that found that asking for their forgiveness is not a particularly effective thing to do in the moment. You should really focus on the other person and say, look, I realized that this was hard for you or you're hurting in some way or I harmed you in some way. And for that, I'm sorry. And then let them decide whether they want to forgive you. And it's hard to do. It takes a tremendous amount of strength to make yourself vulnerable in that way to other people and to possibly admit that you did something wrong.
Okay. So this is stuff that is really got a very popular course. It's going to be a best-selling book because
I hope so.
It will be. Of course it will be. Okay. And it's going to be. And it's going to be because it's real and people need to hear it and it'll help people get comfortable with who they really are, which is the reason why we wanted to bring you on the podcast.
Yeah, I do think.
Don't say you hope so, by the way. Okay. You have to manifest.
Oh, definitely. It should be. I know
both.
that the framework is effective because I've seen it work with so many students already, right? Like I've been now teaching this for 5 years, and it is remarkable to see how learning about the intricacies of these little micro decisions you make at every turn of every conversation, how it really changes people's lives. It's wild. And people come in, just like you said, people come in with different strengths and weaknesses. Some people are funny and some are not. Some are good at asking questions, some aren't. Some are good at focusing on other people. Some are insanely selfish and self-centered. Whatever your strength or weakness is, this framework is helpful.
Okay, so if you've listened to any of my podcasts, we pick 5 words from the book, and then we ask the author to respond in a sentence, a word, something that comes to mind. I'm going to say the word, and you're going to respond. Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
So if I say the word asking, you say what?
Delightful.
Okay, give me more context. So you have to ask people things, right?
You got to ask people things. We all need to ask more questions, especially follow-up questions, open-ended questions that start with what rather than why. Why questions can feel accusatory. So what are you doing later today? What are you excited about? What were you thinking about when you had breakfast this morning? These types of questions are delightful and extract a lot of information. Why questions like, why did you have cornflakes for breakfast? Why are you going to pick up your kid later? Why there can feel accusatory. So ask more questions.
All right, it's good. It's a good segue to my next word, topics.
Topics are everything. I think that might be the most novel part of the book, meaning like this is a really new science, the topics piece of the book. We are making topic choices at every moment of every conversation, not just like, oh, what are we going to talk about at the beginning? No, every time you're speaking, you are deciding whether to stay on this topic or switch to something else. And we can all make those choices much more effectively.
Okay, the L for levity. Levity.
Levity. It's not about being funny. It's about finding the fun, making it fun for people, because conversation requires mutual engagement. It cannot be boring. So it's not about being funny. It's find the fun. You can do that with humor, but you can also do it with warmth, compliments, switching topics, just focusing on the other person.
What about kindness?
Oh, what's not about kindness? It's something kindness is a word that we all learn to treasure and cherish as children. And then we never really figure out how to do it in practice. I think in the book, we put out a nice, very concrete way to think like a kind person, act like a kind person, talk like a kind person through respectful language, receptiveness to opposing views, which can pop up at any moment in any conversation, even ones that are supposed to be fun, and listening, using your words to show people that you're listening to them. Those are kind things.
TALK, talk.
Yeah. I think the talk is everything. It's every relationship in your life is a sequence of conversations. And if we can do each one of them even a tiny bit better, imagine the accumulated effect that would have on your life, on your relationships, and on your work, on the world. This is what we all need to get better at. And it's going to happen in tiny little increments, tiny micro decisions. The decision to make that joke, that decision to ask that great question, the decision to let people have differing views and not get mad at them.
So the book is awesome, by the way. And I got to tell you something. I am very impressed with you because you are an old soul. You're not talking with 40 years worth of wisdom. There's a lot of insight that you're providing. What are some of the people in your life, before I let you go, that you've read or that you've gotten some insight from? You know, I mean, it could be as old as Dale Carnegie. It could be as new as Robert Greene. Or
yeah, I love people. I'm blessed with so many smart, loving, wonderful people in my life that have been influential, starting with my twin sister and amazing parents, all the way to my colleagues at Harvard. I have a wonderful friend at Harvard named Mike Norton, who's just an absolutely brilliant psychologist. He wrote a book last year called The Ritual Effect. We have this sort of fight club. It's Mike Norton, Todd Rogers, who wrote a book called Writing for Busy Readers, Leslie John, whose book Reveal is coming out next year. And we get together almost like a little fight club of behavioral scientists, and they've really shaped how I see the world and think about humanity. and think about how to do good in the world, how to make a small positive dent in the world. There are so many other unexpected things. So I invite a lot of visitors to my class, including, you mentioned Broadway, but we have some like freestyle rappers come to my class. I've learned a lot from people who do improv. So Kelly Leonard, The Second City, is a good friend. And Anthony Veneziale and Lin-Manuel Miranda, who did this show called Freestyle Love Supreme. They come to my class and teach my students about freestyle rapping. I mean, if you can freestyle rap, you're definitely going to get better at conversation.
It's great stuff.
Yeah.
Listen, I really appreciate you coming on. The title of the book is Talk, The Science of Conversation and the Art of Being Ourselves.
Yeah.
It's by Allison Wood Brooks. Thank you so much for being on Open Book.
Thanks for having me, Mooch. Good luck with those little kids.
Thank you. The next person I interviewed was a woman from Harvard Business School. She wrote a book called Talk, and it was about the conversations that we have with people. Her name was Professor Allison Wood Brooks. So tell me, Ma, what do you do all day? You talk on the phone, right? How is it possible for you to have call waiting and every time I call you, the phone is busy? How is that possible? It's like a switching station, right?
Now I'm 88, so the phone is a very good pastime. But when I was young, I was edgy. I used to drive a motorcycle, and I loved it. And I didn't have a helmet, and I liked the idea of my hair blowing. When I was 6, I used to wait for my brother, who was named the Ghost. And I've been on it since I was 6 years old, and I still love it today. And I used to horseback ride, and I worked in a beauty parlor that was fast. I had to quit because I was edgy enough to do something wrong.
What did you do wrong in the beauty parlor?
I didn't do anything wrong, but I could have done. There was things flying around.
Oh, you mean men were making the move on you?
Yeah, and it was a fast-moving shop. It was very, very fast, and I had to quit because I was edgy.
Okay.
When I was young, not now. I even they used to say that I look like Natalie Wood. What the hell is it? They used to say to me.
All right.
And they used to try to make my hairstyle like that. And I do have pictures where she had that hairstyle.
I'm definitely going to need therapy after these podcast conversations, for sure. But do you think you're a good listener, Ma, or what?
Yes, I do.
Okay, tell me what makes a good listener.
Well, I used to read quite a bit when I don't read so much now, but I used to read quite a bit, and I used to read like about Truman, Van Gogh, Roosevelt. I used to read very interesting books. Now I don't.
Mm-hmm. Why not?
Now I read makeup books.
Oh, you like reading about makeup?
I love reading.
But you didn't answer me though. What makes you a good listener? Are you a good listener or not really?
It depends on the topic.
Okay, so what makes a good listener if it's not you?
If it's not me,
what makes a good listener?
You're a good listener. You're a good listener because you go forward and you absorb things. You don't reflect stuff.
Okay.
And I think that's a good listener.
Okay.
When you can absorb what people are saying of any walks of life, you become a good listener. You don't reflect it.
Hey, thank you for watching this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, here's another one right up here that you might like. So joining us now on Open Book is Gretchen Carlson, a former colleague of mine and somebody who always was very nice to me on the air, which I remember fondly, Gretchen. So thank you for that. She is the author of a New York Times bestseller, Getting Real and Be Fierce. You just... an amazing voice, a speaker, a trailblazer, but also, somebody I've gotten to know, Gretchen. I like you a great deal. And so I'm a supporter of your efforts, as you know. And want to talk to you a little bit about everything because we're talking about Miss America. We're talking about a highly successful journalist and author, but you're also helping to pave the way in, let's call it the Me Too movement. I sort of feel it's like a We Too movement, not just a Me Too movement, because everybody's involved in it. And, I have a daughter and a mom and a sister. And so and it's important for me to make people feel safe. So I like to call it the We Too movement, but let's call it the Me Too movement. Tell us where it all started.
Well, Anthony, thanks so much for having me on. It's always great to see you. And thank you for supporting Lift Our Voices, which is the nonprofit that I created after my Fox story 6.5 years ago already. So that's really, where it started for me. I guess my life is testament to the fact that life works in mysterious ways. And certainly jumping off the cliff and coming forward at Fox News against the former CEO and chairman, Roger Ailes, with regard to sexual harassment was something I never envisioned myself doing, nor did I ever expect it to turn out the way that it did in igniting an international movement. But I'm grateful every day that I'm helping millions of people, most of whom I'll never meet. And this has just become my passion project to make workplaces safer. I think that we thought we had solved this, right? I think a lot of women and men thought that this kind of crap doesn't happen anymore at work. And this was really an eye-opening experience for the American public when they realized that, number one, it was still happening. And number two, it was being covered up. And that's what I'm fighting against. I'm fighting to give people their voice back. And I love the title of your podcast, Open Book, because, unfortunately, you mentioned the books that I've written, but I cannot be an open book about what happened to me at Fox because of the silencing mechanism I had to sign called an NDA, which is one of the things I'm fighting against.
Right. Well, there's a lot here to unpack. So I want to start with some of that because I think that the general public, listen, I grew up in a blue collar family. So my friends and family members that have watched you over the years, when somebody says an NDA to them, they don't really get it 100%. So I want you to take us through it. So you had situations that made you very uncomfortable in the workplace, very well documented. They decided that they were going to settle with you, and they made you sign a non-disclosure agreement, an NDA, so that you wouldn't share the sordid details of what took place. So you want to stop that movement, so to speak, because from a public policy perspective, if you can't sign an NDA, it'll force more responsibility on executives, men or women for that matter. But let's face it, it's mostly men who are doing things that are egregious, a result of which it'll put more pressure on them, where actually they'll end up getting fired as opposed to just the woman is upset, she gets paid out and signs an NDA. What did I miss?
Yeah, that's really sort of the vicious cycle that's been going on for the last 40, 50 years. And I go all the way back to Anita Hill. I think you and I are about the same age. That was one of the first stories I covered as a journalist.
I'm lying about my age, Gretchen.
Okay.
You look, I'm probably not allowed to say this, but I'm going to say this. You don't look your age, so we can continue to lie together.
Continue to fool people. But ironically, it's one of the first stories I covered, and I was promptly sexually harassed on my first job in television right after that as well. But I bring that up because my own theory is that that's when all the cover-ups inside companies really started, because that really gave, a name to what sexual harassment was. And I think a lot of companies at that time were like, oh, we better start doing sexual harassment training because now everyone's talking about this. But at the same time, I think a bunch of smart lawyers got together and said, how the hell do we make sure we do not have an Anita Hill at our office? And that's when they started using these silencing mechanisms and really ramping them up. So there's two silencing mechanisms. You talk about NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. 1/3 of all Americans sign those on their first day of work, including me. So on your first day, you're basically walking around with a muzzle on at work for anything bad that happens to you later on. And then something bad happens to you and you want to come forward and they're like, oh, ha, the joke's on you. You sign an NDA, so you're already silenced and there's no way you can talk about this. The second thing that you sign on your first day of work is something called a forced arbitration clause. And when I say that, people go, huh? Nobody knows that they're signing this, but this is what exploded after Anita Hill. In 1991, only 2% of all employees had these arbitration clauses in their employment contracts. But by 2024, 84% of us in America will have these in our contracts. And this is a device also of silencing people. In simple terms, it means that if you want to come forward about anything bad that happens to you at work, you can't go to an open court. You've already signed on the dotted line that you're going to go to something called forced arbitration, which is a secret process where nobody ever finds out about it. The deck's stacked against you from the start. And it protects the predators because nobody knows this is going on. You get pushed out of the workplace. They get to keep working. And so the vicious cycle continues. So these are the two things that I decided to roll up my sleeves after I talked to so many survivors after my story. They'd all been silenced in this way. And I decided I had to do something about it to the best of my ability. And so I started walking the halls of Congress. And, you know, I'm really proud to tell you, and again, thanks for supporting us. At Lift Our Voices, we passed 2 bipartisan pieces of legislation last year in the most hyper-political time of our generation. And you know, I'm so incredibly proud of that because this is actually going to be my legacy. I don't really give a damn about any other TV interviews I've done or presidents I've interviewed or people I've hobnobbed with. None of that matters to me as far as how monumental it was to get these 2 laws passed. So what it means now is if you experience sexual misconduct in the workplace, you no longer have to be forced into the secret chamber of arbitration. You get to come forward if you want to and go to an open court. Number 2, the Speak Out Act was also passed in December, meaning that you no longer have to be subject to an NDA for sexual misconduct if you signed one on your first day of work. So pre-dispute NDA. So we've accomplished a lot, Anthony, but we still have a whole lot more to do because I'm fighting not just for sexual misconduct. I'm fighting for any disenfranchised group in the workplace. So race, gender, age, LGBTQ plus discrimination, disability, all those people are still subject to all these silencing mechanisms. And so we still have a tremendous amount of work to do at Lift Our Voices.
Listen, I'm obviously blown away, impressed by you. And I just want to say this to you, and I want to get you to react to this because you had a 2:00 show on Fox. You were gracious enough to invite me on. And I came on. I walked onto your set. We had a great conversation. It could have been geopolitical or economic or so forth. But at the time you and I met, behind the scenes, okay, in your first book, Getting Real, you had a tremendous amount going on. You had a lot of commotion going on. You were being harassed. You were being intimidated. Yet you were showing up for work. You could never tell. I have to confess this to you, and I almost am embarrassed by this. I had no idea, Gretchen, that any of that was going on. And so as a human being, from one human being to another, I have a heartfelt empathy for that or issue with that. I think about it if it was my daughter or my wife or my sister, mom, or something like that. I want you to address that if you don't mind. Okay. Tell us a little bit about the tension that was there. And then you had to make a decision because there were other women at the same time going through something similar. And they were like, okay, geez, I have to shut up because I need to make this money or I need to do this. There's a lot of equivocation that happens when this goes on. Again, I'm not blaming them either, by the way, because I understand that as well. But tell us about those feelings, the feelings that you had in 2015 and 16, and then what caused you to finally go in the direction that you ultimately went in.
Yeah, I wish I could tell you everything. I have to, this is when my brain goes into lawyer mode and I have to really choose my words carefully because I do have that NDA too, actually. Okay. And so I can't share everything. So
I'm more interested in the feelings and less about the facts.
Ironically, I can't even talk about my feelings. That's how broad these stupid NDAs are.
Well, that's good to know. Then that's why it's important to.
No, they don't listen. You don't want you to be able to say, that you were. They don't want you to be able to say how much it sucked. Okay, so let me just give you a hypothetical. So pretend this isn't about me. It was like walking down a hallway every day with a knife in my back and blood streaming out and me looking behind wondering who was coming after me next. I'm just giving you a hypothetical for what a movie could be about. Yeah. And the problem with these NDAs, if you sign them on the first day of work, is you can't warn anybody else. And so I had signed one of these, so I couldn't tell anyone else what my personal experience was. Arguably, I wasn't even supposed to tell my husband. But, I did. I told them I'm thankful and still blessed to have my parents in my life. I told them. I found out from my lawyers that I could tell my minister, which actually ended up being one of the final things that made me jump because my grandfather had been a minister. And this minister friend of mine, we cried together a lot. And she took my hand at the end and she said to me, your grandfather is looking down on you. And he's telling you to do it. And that was just like, and she said, he's proud of you. And that was just, and then I looked in my children's eyes and I had no idea what the hell was going to happen to them or to their mom. And I did it. I think what helped me to jump also, Anthony, was the fact that Fox fired me. They took away what I had killed myself for over 30 years of getting to the pinnacle of the television industry. And I was good at it. And they took that away from me. They fired me. And that, the confluence of those things all came together at the same time. And I decided to jump off. And I often say that there was absolutely no safety net below me.
Sure.
I thought I was going to come home and cry my eyes out for the rest of my life and spend more time with my dog. Needless to say, what the safety net became in my life were all these women started reaching out to me. And I was like, holy shit, this is an epidemic. This is an effing epidemic. All these women have been pushed out of the workplace. And the second epidemic was that they'd all been silenced. And that's when I decided to roll up my sleeves and get to work, because I was like, I have to honor all these people who have never had a voice. That's what made me write the book, Be Fierce. And then, just moved into all of this advocacy work that I'm doing. So that was really what made me, I'm blessed to have my family. My kids, actually, I found out that courage is contagious. My kids got it from me now. And it's been a blessing for me to watch them grow up, especially my son, because we spend a lot of time talking about empowering women to stand up and speak up. But really the crux of this whole problem is men. It's getting to our boys young so that they learn to respect women in the workplace the same way that they look at their mothers. And I know I've given that to my kids. And my son, one quick story, he saw me on CNN one night talking about all of this. And he was waiting for me when I got home in the kitchen. He said, Mom, he said, is it true what that other woman said on TV, that once every 83 seconds in our country, somebody is assaulted or harassed, a woman? And I said, I'm so sorry to tell you that that is true. And he looked at me with tears in his eyes and he said, Mommy, as a young boy, I want to help fix that. He was 12.
I mean, I don't want to interrupt you. See, I've learned from the Gretchen Carlson good interviewers, when someone's saying something so meaningful, keep your mouth shut. I want to ask this. I think this is enough of a hypothetical where perhaps you can answer it. What do you wish you knew now about your Fox and Roger Ailes experience? Like, meaning, what do you wish that you knew then that you now know now about it?
I wish I, would have had the courage to stand up earlier. I probably would have saved a lot of hell for people. But then I could say that about everyone else who never stood up either. I wish I would have, I wish in my early 20s, when I was sexually assaulted twice, that I would have said something. Instead, I stuffed it down inside of my heart and hoped it would never come back up, like so many other women are socialized to do. We're not supposed to talk about it. I didn't even call it sexual assault until I was writing Be Fierce. Until after my experience at Fox News, I admitted that these other two things had happened to me.
Right.
And it was just me trying to break into the TV business when I was Miss America, actually. And I cold called high-level executives, some of whom are still living. And they sexually assaulted me, both of them, in a car, not together, in different episodes, 3 weeks apart from each other. And I never, ever told anyone. And until I wrote the book, my first book, Getting Real. So I think, look, it's about all of us deciding that we're going to stand up and speak up earlier. And it's easier said than done. With all the women who still reach out to me, I say to them, coming forward is such a personal choice, because you're still going to be maligned and you're still going to be retaliated against. I'm working tooth and nail to change that. But it's likely still going to happen to you, because changing culture and the way we look at these issues is tougher than passing bipartisan legislation. Tougher. So, my advice to them is, I'm here for you and I will listen and try to guide you, but it's your personal decision, because you will likely lose your career still. when you come forward. And that's the piece of the puzzle. That's my ultimate goal, to change that part of it.
Do you think that newsrooms have changed at all since your outing, if you will, since your declaration of what is actually going on? Do you think Fox News has changed at all? Has there been a transformation in any way?
I'd love to answer that question, but I can't. All I can say to you is that if they've changed, then why don't they let me out of my NDA? I've asked to be let out of my NDA.
Right.
If everything's changed there, then what's the problem? So that should answer it.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, the problem is obvious. They don't want the past. Either it hasn't changed, or they don't want the past to become their present in terms of the news cycle. I want to talk about this legislation, though, that you worked to pass last year. Congratulations! I think it's amazing. Go into a little bit more detail about the bill. Why was it needed, and what was the process like to get there? I had an 11-day horrific experience in Washington. I got my PhD in how these people operate. It is very hard to go from an idea to getting quote unquote bipartisan legislation passed. So take us through that sausage making, if you don't mind.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's really easy to introduce legislation. If you ask members of Congress how many bills they've introduced, they'll proudly stand up and say thousands. And then when you ask them how many they've actually gotten passed and they say zero or one, that proves how difficult it is. I think that what helped me in this process was that, specifically with Republican members of Congress who arguably had watched Fox News, and I was there for a long time, they knew who I was. And I think that they thought that if that could have happened to me at Fox News, maybe they should listen to me. And so that's how I got in the door and got meetings. By the way, I've been a registered independent my whole life. So I see things on both sides. I've voted for both Republicans and Democrats. And I know people often think like you had to be a Republican to work at Fox News, which was not the case for me. But I think that's helped me to be able to tell my story as much as I can to Republican members of Congress. And I think they trust me. And quite honestly, I needed at least 10 senators, right, who were Republican to get past the filibuster, to pass any kind of legislation. And even though the House then was controlled by Democrats, I still needed a wide swath of bipartisan support to send a message. So I think that was my first strategy, was to try to go after Republicans first. I also went after Republicans who were retiring because I felt like they would be more bold and would make, would side with this tends to be more of a Democratic issue, getting rid of these silencing mechanisms. So I had a lot of strategies in place. And then I also decided to just take a bite out of the apple instead of going for the whole thing in one big fell swoop, because I knew we would never get Republican support for all of these other things that I'm talking about for other protected classes. And so I decided to just, let's tackle forced arbitration and NDAs just for sexual misconduct and see how far we can get with this. And I will tell you that I saw a lot of hearts and minds changing over this 5-year process of trying to get these bills passed. I think that members of Congress, just like the general public, started to realize that this movement is not going away. And if they know me, they know I'm relentless. And so I'm going to keep pounding on the door. And I saw them change their hearts and minds about this. And slowly but surely, I got more and more Republicans to come to my side on this. And so after a 5-year journey, when it went to the arbitration bill went for a vote in the House, we got 113 Republicans. That is seriously bipartisan. Thought we were going to get 25. 3 days later, it went to the Senate, and unanimously it passed in the Senate. And then my strategy proved to be, I think, a good one, because a mere 7 months later, I passed the Speak Out Act, the NDA bill. And that was my strategy all along, is take a bite out of the apple, get people to come to the table, talk about these issues, and then move on with the next iteration of it. And that's exactly what we're doing. And quite honestly now, Anthony, in 2023, I'm already moving forward with going back to the table again on arbitration. And who can we all agree on that we should protect next? And so I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag next, but I'm going to tell you that this year I plan to pass another bill.
Well, listen, I'm rooting for you. I want to test something on you, and then I want to get your reaction. So I recently interviewed Jamie Fiore Higgins. She's the author of Bully Market. I think you know Jamie. She spoke out about her experiences at Goldman Sachs. She was very honest about how in the beginning she sort of felt complicit because she was trying to run her career and she was afflicted with these Me Too events, and she looked the other way. I have this feeling that I'm going to test on you that there's a quote unquote machismo in the workplace. Okay. I'm being yelled at for interviewing the likes of you and Jamie Fiore Higgins. Why am I being yelled at? I'm being yelled at, well, because I'm not machismo or alpha enough, meaning like there's an unspoken protocol. And so therefore, if you are siding with these women, then you're outside of the men's club. Okay. And so I want to get your reaction to that. Actually, I don't give a shit about that. It's my podcast, so I'm allowed to curse about it. If I gave a shit about it, I wouldn't be interviewing you. Okay. If anything, I think we need to break through this nonsense. But I want to get your reaction to that. Am I right about that? Did you sense that at Fox, that there was this sort of unspoken protocol? And then secondarily, what do you say about that? Okay, because every one of these men have wives that they wouldn't want sexually harassed or daughters that they wouldn't want sexually harassed, yet they want to walk around with this like machismo alpha fraternity-like swagger. So what's your reaction to all that?
Well, first of all, real men stand up for women. So
amen.
Thank you.
Amen.
Thank
well
you
said.
for that.
Amen.
And it's the only way we're going to change this vicious cycle. I mean, let's be real. The world is still run by men. Okay. I don't love that part of it necessarily. I think we should have more female CEOs. We should have more females in higher positions of power. That's how we change all this crap. But as long as men still rule the world, we got to get them on our side. So I extend the olive branch to men. I don't care how macho you are. Come join my team. Come join what we're doing at Lift Our Voices. Change the policies at your company because you're pushing out the exact people you want to retain that increases your bottom line. Women
100%.
and people of color. So
Goldman ignored Jamie Gretchen. They should have brought her in.
Yep.
All they had to do is say, you know what? We're going to have a town hall meeting. Jamie, describe what happened. I'm the CEO. I really don't want this happening. It's just bad for business. It slows us all down. Keep your, you know what, in your pants inside the office, and I'm laughing a little bit about this stuff because I'm not going to mention the name of the august journalist, journal, if you will, so you'll get where I'm going. But I had a 6-month where people were looking at me, accusing me. The journalist no one was inside my office. They went down LinkedIn and they identified every single woman that worked at Skybridge and called them and said, did Anthony Scaramucci sexually harass you? And these women were calling me saying, I don't know why this guy's asking me this. Of course, you didn't do that. Finally, I had to call the editor-in-chief. I said, okay, you're working on this for 6 months. You can't find anybody. How much longer are you guys going to do this for? The point being is that the fish stinks from the head down. If you are sending a message to people, Fox could do that. CNN could do that. ABC News. I mean, it's sort of like an orgy going on at ABC News, apparently. I don't know. But you could basically, fish stinks from the head down. This is how we're going to operate. If you don't like it, leave.
Yep.
And so how do you get more men to speak like that?
Well,
not with the cursing, of course, but you know what I mean. The general, hey, enough is enough.
Yeah. Well, look, you're exactly right about how this all works. It's all about power. Okay. And that's why the way in which you describe the machismo men, that it's hard to give up power. It's hard to accept change. That's why I go on my Twitter feed someday. Not everyone likes what I'm doing because I'm disrupting the system. So power is very difficult to give up. That is what this is all about. And you're right. It starts at the top. And so what I try to do is get to CEOs because those are the people that can actually make a change. Imagine the change in dynamic. If a CEO at a company gets everyone together and says, I will not tolerate this. And if this happens to you, you come to me directly, and I will make sure that we do an independent investigation, and I will try to preserve your job, and we'll get rid of the bad actor. That changes the entire dynamic of how things work inside. Instead, what currently happens the majority of the time is employees go to HR thinking they're doing the right thing, and HR is not your friend. They never will be. They've done a great PR job of making employees feel like that's the place to go and they're looking out for you. And they're not, because they get their paycheck from the company. They're doing everything in their power to protect the company. So now you go to HR, and if you have a forced arbitration clause or an NDA, you're screwed. And they look at you and go, you're going over here to the secret chamber. No one's ever going to hear from you ever again. They don't tell you that right away, but they're like, oh, we're going to go to arbitration. It's going to be cheaper and quicker for you. And nobody will have to know about this. That's the system we need to change. And CEOs can change that in a split second by going to my website, liftourvoices.org, and taking the language I have for them right there, and they can change their policies today. That's what I spend a lot of my time doing, Anthony, now, is I speak to CEOs and I tell them, the train has left the station. The movement's not going away. Join me now, or eventually I will force you to do it, because I will continue to pass more laws. So if you want to get a good PR boost right now, do what's right, honor your employees, let them own their own voice, and let's move forward on this path together.
I mean, it's very well said, Gretchen, which is why I think you are such a powerful, influential voice for the movement. What advice would you give to women out there? What would you say to women of all ages that are starting their careers or in the middle of their careers or finishing their careers? What would you say?
Raise your sons to be vulnerable so that we can work on not just women being the ones that show emotions and that we deem that to be weak. Encourage your sons to show their emotions. It'll make them better people in the long run and more respectful of others. When you get into the workplace, look at what you're signing on the first day. Start asking Start asking on the first day, instead of just saying, "What's my vacation time?" and what's my health care? Do you silence your workers? Do you have forced arbitration clauses and NDAs? Do you silence people on the first day on the job?
Yeah,
that's really important to normalize all of this, by the way. Yeah. And then, if something bad happens to you, I encourage people to talk about it and speak up, because that's the only way that we can change the system. We've learned that by talking about these issues is how we solve them. And so the more of us who talk about them, the more that we can solve it. But again, the onus should not just be on the women. The onus is not on women to change this system. The onus is on all of us to come together to understand the problem and to decide that we want to work together to change it. Shouldn't only be on the shoulders of women.
Let me push back and do a little bit of role playing with you, and I want you to respond to it. So, Gretchen, I hear all of that, but I'm a blue collar kid. I went to State University. I now got this amazing job at this very high profile corporation that's going to lift me from the lower middle class into the upper middle class, possibly even the wealthy class. And there's a certain system in place, and I need this for my family. So I am going to shut up, and I am going to sign this, and I'm going to play with inside of their rules, because I don't want to be a rabble rouser that could potentially get knocked out of this job that I desperately need, that I think is so important for me. Your response to that is?
I totally understand that. And that's why I'm doing the work for you. Because I understand that there are people out there that don't have my profile or my megaphone, or quite honestly, the balls to go toe to toe on it. They can't afford to. And I understand that. But for those who do decide to at least ask questions about these silencing mechanisms, that will start the process of normalizing it. And then I would just point out that sometimes we forget the power that each of us individually has. And I will point to the Google walkout, if you remember that several years ago. Everyone in Google all across the world walked out on one day. And what was that all about? People might remember the walkout, but they don't remember what it was about. And they don't remember that it was all on the shoulders of one woman who had the idea to do a walkout to protest arbitration clauses in Google contracts.
Yeah. Listen,
and everyone walked out, men, women, in countries all around the world. And you know what happened the next day? Google took arbitration clauses out of their workplace.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what happened. Look at Rosa Parks, right? I mean, she got on the bus, said, "I'm too tired. I'm not moving. Sorry. Let's, and then they got forced to change it, and obviously change comes with pain, unfortunately. Okay. So I do this with all of my authors. I have 5 words or phrases. I ask you to react to them. Okay. So let's start out with the first one. Ready? Miss America.
First classical violinist to ever win the title. The only reason I did it. And I paid for my last year at Stanford University with the scholarship money that I won.
All right. It was a cool experience though, right?
Yeah. I didn't know how long you were. Yeah. But look, again, my life works in mysterious ways. I was a tomboy growing up. I played football with my brothers outside. I happened to play a mean violin. And 50% of your points were based on talent. And I quit the violin when I was 17, and my mom really wanted me to keep playing. So she got a brochure in the mail about Miss America, saw how many points were talent. She called me up when I was studying at Oxford, actually. And she's like, "I found something for you to do next summer." I was like, "What?" She said, "Miss America." I'm like, "Are you high?" But look, my mom's been an incredibly motivating part of my life and my rock. And
well, I'm sure in addition to your grandfather, she's very proud of you.
So I ended up it was there was a tremendous amount of luck involved, but yes, it was a wonderful experience. It got me into television, gave me amazing communication skills, and made me realize that I can give a speech even without notes for an hour, which I was forced to do on many occasions when I was Miss America.
#MeToo.
Never in my wildest dreams believed in my life that I would be one of the instigating forces of the Me Too movement. Never planned it, not something that you would ever aspire to put on your resume, but thank God we're still in it.
Fox.
Well, let's clarify. Fox News.
Fox News.
There is a Fox network.
News. Okay, let's clarify. You're right. Fox News.
Originally went there for the opportunity of a lifetime to do what I always wanted to do, which was a Monday through Friday national morning television show that gave me the opportunity to show my smarts and also my personality. And never envisioned that it would turn out the way that it did or that Fox News would be what it is today.
Megyn Kelly.
I don't really know Megyn that well because we worked on opposite ends of the time spectrum. I would just say that I'm thankful that she also added her voice to the Fox women who came forward after I jumped off the cliff.
Roger Ailes.
I heard through the grapevine later on that he actually feared me. And that makes me sleep at night.
Interesting. Yeah, no, listen, I knew Roger, as you know. I mean, I had several interactions with him, and he was extremely talented, but I would just be very candid with you because I'm a man. I never saw that, but I wasn't close enough to him to be inside the perimeter to actually see any of that. Not surprised by any of it, of course, because, I've worked in big corporations and I watched this go on. And I think this is the message. This is why I wanted to bring you on Open Book, because the message is this is going on. It's not just at places like that or other media establishments. It's going on in large and small corporations around the country, and it hurts business. It's not good for business. Okay. Also, more diversity leads to greater innovation and greater economic ideas and more money. Okay, so I don't care if you're a green lesbian from Mars. If you're talented, I want you at Skybridge, and I want you to feel comfortable and safe working at Skybridge, period, the end. And so your voice is so important for all this stuff. And I know that, you're only getting started, Gretchen. So before I let you go, what's next? We have some legislation you're working on. Is there another book in the offing? What else are you thinking about?
Writing books is easy. Selling books is almost impossible in this day and age. So I'm not clamoring to do another book right now. Yes, more legislation on the horizon at the state level and also the federal level. Putting together the first ever corporate rating system using my metrics of silencing mechanisms, which we will publish hopefully at the end of the year, which will be eye-opening and where we will be giving companies a rating of whether or not they silence their people. We feel like employees need to know before they go to work whether or not they're going to wear a muzzle. Raising my two beautiful children, continuing to do that, and you never know. You never know what else I'm going to get involved in. I never say no to any sort of like, what are you going to do next? Because my life has just led me in many, many different directions. So right now, that's what I'm focused on. And I also have a startup, a tech company that I'm going to be starting up, but that's far away from an announcement. So stay tuned for that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I want to have you back. So hopefully we'll be able to talk about that when you come back. Gretchen Carlson, she's a New York Times bestselling author, Getting Real and Be Fierce. And she's a trailblazer. And I'm proud to call you a friend, Gretchen. I really do appreciate you coming on Open Book.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for your support.